From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Thursday, July the 24th, 2025. 8 IDF soldiers were hurt in what appears to have been a deliberate car-ramming terror attack in central Israel today. The IDF said 2 IDF soldiers were moderately injured and 6 additional soldiers lightly injured in a ramming incident at the Beit Lead junction, which is near Netanya. These soldiers were evacuated to the hospital for treatment, and a manhunt was underway for the suspect. Israeli and American negotiating teams have been recalled from hostage talks in Doha. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying today, in light of the response conveyed by Hamas this morning, it has been decided to return the negotiating team for additional consultations in Israel. We appreciate the efforts by the mediators, he said, Qatar and Egypt, and the efforts of envoy Witkoff to achieve a breakthrough in the negotiations. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff wrote, "We have decided to bring our team home from Doha for consultations after the latest response from Hamas," which Witkoff wrote clearly shows a lack of desire to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. While the mediators have made a great effort, he said, Hamas does not appear to be coordinated or acting in good faith. We will now consider alternative options to bring the hostages home and try to create a more stable environment for the people of Gaza. It is a shame, Witkoff said, that Hamas has acted in this selfish way. We are resolute in seeking an end to this conflict and a permanent peace in Gaza. 50 hostages remain held captive by terror group Hamas in Gaza now for 657 days. And amid its ongoing operation in Gaza, the IDF said it eliminated a key terrorist today who served as the head of the goods terminal at the Rafah crossing, where he managed hundreds of weapon and military equipment smuggling operations into the Gaza Strip, directly aiding the strengthening of the Hamas terrorist organization. The Rafah crossing is one of the humanitarian aid crossings in Gaza. And the IDF said today that a rocket was fired by terrorists in Gaza last night, landing next to an aid distribution site in Rafah. An example, the IDF said, of how terror groups are working to disrupt aid distribution compounds. The rocket landed approximately 250 meters, some 800 feet from the compound. Despite that fact, the IDF said the aid distribution site opened today, and tens of thousands of weekly food packages were distributed to families. And the IDF yesterday shared the final results of its investigation into the Errant hit on a church in Gaza City last week, saying that during an operational activity by IDF forces in the Gaza City area, the Latin church was inadvertently hit due to an unintended deviation of fire. The strike caused damage to the building and 3 casualties, as well as several injuries. The IDF reiterated that it directs its military strikes solely at military targets and takes every possible measure to minimize harm to civilians and civilian infrastructure, including religious institutions, saying that it regrets any harm to civilians. Well, Columbia University announced yesterday that it reached an agreement with the U.S. government to resolve multiple federal agency investigations into alleged violations of federal anti-discrimination laws. The school will pay a $200 million settlement over 3 years, and terminated grants will be reinstated. Acting President Claire Shipman wrote, "As part of the settlement, the university has not admitted wrongdoing and does not agree with the government's conclusion that it violated Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. We are not, however, denying the very serious and painful challenges our institution has faced with anti-Semitism," noting several important corrective steps Columbia took back in March and additional measures to combat anti-Semitism announced last week. Shipman wrote, "We know there is still more to do." Well, U.S. Representatives Democrat Josh Gottheimer, Republican Don Bacon, together with CEO of the Anti-Defamation League Jonathan Greenblatt, held a press conference yesterday announcing the Stop Hate Act, bipartisan legislation to hold tech platforms accountable for hosting terrorist and extremist content. Gottheimer noting an explosion of disinformation and anti-Semitic hate online, especially since the horrific October 7th terrorist attacks. He said after the shooting outside the Capitol Jewish Museum, anti-Zionist extremists used social media to call for further violence. He said our legislation will be a new tool in our online arsenal to protect our nation against terrorists and foreign adversaries. Bacon said, "We want to be in a country that makes clear that anti-Semitism or any kind of racism is repugnant, unacceptable, not allowed in an online space." Greenblatt saying, as anti-Semitism and hate surge to record levels, this bill will provide essential oversight and ensure companies enforce their own policies, urging Congress to pass the Stop Hate Act without delay. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Thursday, July the 24th. At 7 o'clock, Israel's renowned family ensemble Colin Schachat Sons perform a diverse selection of popular Jewish music alongside Cantor Netanel Hershtik at the Hampton Synagogue. At 8, Jonah Platt speaks with English comedian, screenwriter, author, and proud Jew David Baddiel. At 9, it's Joseph Cedar on L'chaim. At 10, David Harris speaks with New York Post columnist David Kaufman. At 10:30, an encore of the news. And coming up next, Eric Goldman speaks with filmmaker Dani Rosenberg to discuss his docudrama of Dogs and Men. It tells of a young girl who returns to her kibbutz to look for her missing dog after the October 7th Hamas massacre. And that's the JBS News Update for Thursday, July the 24th, 2025. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.